The pristine assault rifle featured in the evening news broadcast, clutched tightly by a masked insurgent in a crumbling desert city, did not simply materialize out of thin air. It has a complex, blood-soaked passport, having traveled thousands of miles through a deliberate, invisible architecture of human greed and geopolitical calculation. You are about to enter the absolute darkest sector of global commerce, a thriving, recession-proof shadow economy where the core commodity is engineered human destruction. This is the unacknowledged world of the International Arms Trafficking Syndicate, a sprawling corporate empire that operates with the logistical precision of a Fortune 500 company, but follows absolutely no laws, respects no borders, and values human life strictly as a depreciating asset. You will experience the harrowing psychological descent from a terrified, expendable border smuggler hauling rusty crates in the dead of night, to the untouchable apex predator of global conflict, the Lord of War, who comfortably dictates the violent trajectory of entire nations from a soundproof luxury penthouse. The terrifying reality is that wars are not naturally occurring disasters. They are highly profitable, meticulously engineered industrial projects, and you are about to become the primary supplier. Your indoctrination into this lethal supply chain begins at the absolute bottom, in the suffocating heat and perpetual paranoia of a lawless border crossing. You are officially known as a mule, the lowest, most utterly disposable biological component in the syndicate's vast machinery. You do not operate from a sleek office. Your workplace is the rusted, rattling bed of a dilapidated pickup truck, vibrating violently over unmapped dirt roads in the pitch black. Your cargo consists of heavy, splintering wooden crates packed with aging, cosmoline-slathered munitions salvaged from forgotten military bunkers. You know absolutely nothing about the strategic objectives of the men you are supplying. You do not know if the bullets you carry will be used to liberate a suppressed population or massacre an innocent village, and you are aggressively conditioned to ensure you never care. Your entire psychological framework is reduced to raw, unadulterated survival and the desperate pursuit of a meager cash payout. You constantly scan the dark horizon for the sweeping spotlights of militarized border patrols, knowing with absolute certainty that if your fragile convoy is intercepted, you will either be gunned down in the dirt or thrown into a subterranean military prison to rot forever. The massive, wealthy syndicate that orchestrated this shipment will not send highly paid lawyers to defend you. They will simply write off your tragic death as a minor operational expense and immediately hire another desperate local to take your seat in the truck. You are trading your life, your freedom, and your morality to transport heavy metal objects across imaginary lines drawn in the sand, acutely aware that your survival depends entirely on your ability to remain completely invisible. If you manage to survive the brutal, unforgiving meat grinder of the smuggling routes without catching a stray bullet or a lengthy prison sentence, your raw instinct and reliability elevate you out of the dust. You transition into the highly stressful, inherently dangerous role of regional facilitator. You are no longer sweating in the back of a moving vehicle. You now violently command the localized staging grounds, operating out of heavily guarded, unmarked warehouses nestled deep within the decaying industrial zones of chaotic transit cities. Your operational mandate expands from simple transportation to complex, highly volatile inventory management and localized diplomatic negotiation. You are the critical, indispensable bridge connecting the invisible, untouchable global suppliers with the desperate, heavily armed local buyers. Your daily interactions are no longer with illiterate drivers, but with extremely dangerous, highly unpredictable clients. You sit at dimly lit folding tables, negotiating high-stakes bulk transactions with ruthless warlords, fanatical militia commanders, and deeply corrupt regional defense ministers who urgently require untraceable firepower to crush their localized political opposition. At this intermediate rank, you undergo a profound, chilling emotional detachment. You deliberately strip away the horrifying reality of the lethal hardware surrounding you. When you open a crate of fragmentation grenades, you do not envision the catastrophic human suffering they will inevitably inflict. You solely see fluctuating profit margins, regional supply shortages, and highly lucrative market opportunities. You realize with terrifying clarity that a sudden violent breakdown in local peace negotiations is not a humanitarian catastrophe to be mourned. It is an incredibly rare, highly profitable demand spike that you must instantly and ruthlessly exploit by artificially inflating the street price of armor-piercing ammunition. You become a brilliant, cold-blooded actuary of human conflict, expertly utilizing cash bribes to systematically compromise underpaid customs inspectors, ensuring your lethal cargo seamlessly bypasses official checkpoints. You are the invisible maestro of localized chaos, but you are still just managing the violent symptoms of a much larger global infection. Your proven mastery in pacifying violent clients and managing massive illegal inventories eventually propels you out of the grim regional warehouses and directly into the sophisticated white-collar arena of the global gray market. You officially ascend to the prestigious rank of maritime logistics broker. You completely abandon the physical handling of dirty weapons and relocate entirely to pristine, heavily encrypted corporate offices situated in untouchable offshore financial havens. Your entire operation now exists in the sprawling, highly complex legal vacuum where legitimate international maritime commerce seamlessly bleeds into catastrophic illicit trafficking. You no longer deal in hundreds of rifles, you deal in thousands of tons of sophisticated military hardware, quietly purchasing decommissioned but highly lethal artillery systems, armored personnel carriers, and surface-to-air missiles directly from the cash-starved governments of collapsing nations. Your absolute most devastating and highly effective weapon is no longer a firearm. It is a meticulously forged, legally binding document known as an end-user certificate. You expertly deploy massive amounts of untraceable capital to bribe highly placed defense officials in neutral, perfectly stable countries, paying them to officially sign documents stating that a massive shipment of heavy weaponry is destined exclusively for their own peaceful national army. Once your massive, rusted cargo ship legally departs the international port under a convenient flag of registry, you execute a highly encrypted, untraceable digital command. You silently alter the massive vessel's maritime trajectory in the middle of the ocean, seamlessly diverting the devastating payload directly into the hands of a heavily sanctioned, violently aggressive rebel insurgency actively fighting a brutal civil war. You view strict international arms embargoes and severe human rights sanctions not as profound moral imperatives designed to protect innocent lives, but simply as highly complex, incredibly lucrative logistical puzzles waiting to be brilliantly dismantled by your vast network of highly paid maritime attorneys. You are completely insulated from the physical blood and dirt, cleanly orchestrating mass devastation through pristine spreadsheets and encrypted satellite phones. Having definitively proven your unshakable mastery over complex international maritime logistics and fraudulent diplomatic documentation, you are highly selectively recruited directly into the absolute terrifying pinnacle of the modern military-industrial complex. You are elevated to the highly classified, incredibly powerful rank of state-sanctioned private defense contractor. You no longer supply ragtag rebel militias or isolated uneducated regional warlords. You are now the primary, indispensable shadow supplier for the massive multi-billion-dollar private military companies and the highly classified, entirely unacknowledged deep state ghost units operating across the globe. You operate in a terrifying, completely unregulated dimension where your highly illegal, globally destabilizing clandestine activities are actively and secretly protected by the very same massive intelligence agencies that publicly and aggressively condemn global arms trafficking on the international stage. When a major nuclear-armed superpower urgently needs to heavily arm a highly deniable, violently anti-government proxy force in a contested region without leaving a single traceable diplomatic fingerprint or triggering a massive global incident, they absolutely do not use their own official, highly scrutinized military supply chains. They secretly and quietly contract you. You flawlessly arrange the complex, highly deniable transfer of incredibly advanced, heavily restricted weaponry, including sophisticated anti-tank guided missiles, weaponized autonomous drone swarms, and advanced encrypted communication arrays, directly into the hottest, most heavily monitored conflict zones on the planet. You sit in incredibly opulent, highly secure hotel suites in major global capitals, calmly sipping expensive scotch while negotiating massive nine-figure equipment contracts directly with untouchable, ruthlessly corporate, mercenary executives and deeply compromised, completely unfireable national intelligence directors. You understand with chilling absolute certainty that your sprawling, entirely illegal operation is absolutely not a rogue element of the global system. It is an absolutely vital, highly integrated structural component of modern geopolitical warfare. You are the indispensable, highly paid invisible lubricant that allows massive, powerful empires to violently clash in the shadows while simultaneously maintaining the highly fragile, utterly fake public illusion of global diplomatic peace. Your evolving psychology is one of absolute, terrifying superiority, viewing international laws governing armed conflict as nothing more than theatrical performances strictly designed to pacify the ignorant civilian population. Finally, after decades of relentlessly and brilliantly exploiting global conflict, amassing an incredibly vast, entirely untraceable offshore fortune, you ascend to the absolute, untouchable zenith of the entire shadow economy. You are officially the Lord of War, the undisputed, invisible kingpin of a massive, heavily fortified global trafficking syndicate that completely rivals the logistical capabilities and raw financial power of any legitimate, sovereign nation. You have completely and irreversibly transcended the petty mortal concepts of political ideology, national loyalty, or human allegiance. To you, absolutely every single nation on Earth, regardless of its political system, religious fervor, or moral standing, is simply a highly eager, incredibly profitable customer, waiting to be expertly and ruthlessly serviced. You do not simply react to emerging organic global conflicts, you actively, methodically, and brilliantly engineer them from scratch. You deliberately supply highly advanced, incredibly destructive offensive weaponry to a fragile, deeply paranoid nation, instantly triggering a massive, highly predictable regional arms race. You then immediately and secretly reach out to their most bitter, deeply entrenched geopolitical rivals across the border, offering them even more advanced, highly expensive technological countermeasures at an exorbitant, completely non-negotiable premium. You are playing a massive, incredibly bloody game of multidimensional global chess, expertly manipulating the deep historical fears and violent ambitions of entire sovereign governments to absolutely guarantee a perpetual, incredibly lucrative state of armed global tension. You have achieved the absolute ultimate evolution of the unchecked, hyper-militarized capitalist machine, completely untethered from any remaining fragile concept of human morality or international accountability. You hold the terrifying, absolute godlike power to instantly escalate a minor, localized border dispute into a catastrophic, full-scale regional war simply by heavily subsidizing a massive, untraceable shipment of advanced surface-to-air missiles. But as you silently stare at the massive, highly encrypted global tracking map illuminating your private office, watching your countless heavily armed cargo ships silently crisscrossing the world's oceans, a chilling, inescapable realization slowly solidifies in your deeply cynical mind. You have flawlessly built a massive, incredibly profitable global empire entirely predicated on the continuous, systematic, and entirely unavoidable destruction of human civilization. The terrifying, highly advanced autonomous weapons you are constantly pumping into the fragile global ecosystem are rapidly spinning completely out of your direct control, threatening to ultimately engulf the very same stable, highly secure Western financial capitals where you currently hide your massive, blood-soaked wealth. You realize with absolute, crushing dread that you have not successfully conquered the global system. You have simply armed it perfectly for an inevitable, catastrophic global suicide. But the immense, insatiable global demand for kinetic violence absolutely never ceases, and the highly lucrative shipments must flow. Stay tuned, because the incredibly dark, deeply guarded secrets of how these massive shadow corporations actively launder their blood-soaked billions directly through your local, seemingly innocent high street banks is about to be completely exposed, revealing how your daily life quietly funds the end of the world.